So now with the definition of Angular and the different versions out of the way, let's simply dive into it and let's build our first Angular app. For that, we'll use the official Angular command line interface, CLI. And that is the recommended and best way of creating Angular projects because Angular projects are actually a bit more elaborate regarding their build workflow. There are a couple of files that need to be converted before they can run in the browser, and this CLI does all of that, and it also heavily optimizes our code so that we ship a highly optimized code version to the browser once we finally deploy our app, which we'll also do in this course in the end, of course. So the Angular CLI, and you can see all the steps you need to run on the left here, and these steps are the same for Windows and Mac. Now for them to work, you need one additional tool, and that's Node.js. Node.js is a server-side language, and you might be wondering, what are we doing with it in this course? It's an Angular course, not a Node course. And you'd be right, we won't write any Node.js code here, but Node.js will be used behind the scenes by the CLI to bundle and optimize our project, and we'll use NPM, the Node Package Manager, to manage the different dependencies an Angular project has. Dependencies are things like the Angular framework itself, but also some other libraries that framework uses. So you can simply download the latest version here by clicking on that button. In my case, it's 10.0, but that might differ for you. And you will get an installer for which you can walk, which will conveniently install Node.js and this NPM tool on your machine. Once you finish the installation, we can run these commands, and we run them in our terminal or command prompt. Now here I'm on a Mac, therefore I use the normal terminal. If you were on Windows, you would open the normal command prompt. Possibly open that as an administrator by right-clicking on the executable and clicking Run as Administrator to rule out some potential issues. But in the end, you should be able to simply run npm using that Node Package Manager, install -G to install it globally on your machine, at Angular/CLI at latest. At latest is optional, at Angular/CLI is not. So you absolutely need to run this. Now on Windows, this should just work. On Mac or Linux, you probably need to add a sudo in front of this to give yourself the right permissions. Hit enter, and now I'm prompted to enter my password. You may or may not be. And once you confirmed everything, this should now download the Angular CLI from this Node Package Manager repository and install it on your machine. Now, as you can see, you might get some errors in between, like I'm getting here. You may ignore them as long as it successfully installed the CLI, as you can tell by the output here at the bottom. So it updated two packages or added them if you installed it the first time, and you see the CLI and the version installed. Now, the version can differ depending on the time when you installed this, by the way. The general functionality will not differ. So this did work. Now with that, we can create our first Angular project. And for that, in the terminal, in the command prompt, first of all, navigate into the folder on your system, on your computer, where you want to create that project. You can go there with the cd command. This is a command which is available on macOS and Windows. And with that command, you can navigate into any folder which already exists though. So it must be a folder which you already created. In my case, I'm going into the development teaching Udemy folder. But again, that is a path which I created ahead of time. Simply go into any folder where you have read and write access to. And once you're there, once you're in that place where you want to create your Angular project, you can create it with this ng-new command, which you also find on the official webpage. So here in that folder where I want to create this project, I will now run ng-new, and then any project name of your choice, a new folder of that name will then be created in that folder where you're running this command. And I'll just pick my-first-app here as a name. You can pick any name, but it shouldn't contain any white space and it shouldn't contain the word test. But other than that, you are free to use whichever name you want. And then also important, add --no-strict here. A strict mode is a special mode in which we can create our projects, and we'll look at strict mode or at optimizing our projects later in the course, but to get started and make it a bit easier for us, we'll start in non-strict mode here. And then you can hit enter and this will create a new Angular project for you. Now you're then asked a couple of questions, whether you want to add Angular routing, and here you should choose N for no, we don't want to add it yet. We'll dive into it later in this course. And which style sheet format you'd like to use for writing your styling code. And here I'll use standard CSS, so I will confirm this default selection here for me, CSS. And now this goes ahead and creates a new Angular project. And as I said, we need this more complex setup because, for example, Angular uses TypeScript, a superset of JavaScript. So basically a language that looks a bit like JavaScript and is compiled down to JavaScript in the end by that workflow, but which also offers some extra features. And to do that compilation, as well as a couple of other optimization steps, we need this more complex setup with all these dependencies. Now, once this finished successfully, and if it didn't, check out the lecture prior to this video here. I do share some common gotchas and fixes there. So once this finished successfully, we can navigate into that with the cd command and then the name of the project. In my case, it's my-first-app. And once you're in there, you can run ngserve to basically bring up a development server that will run your built and for development optimized app so that you can see it in the browser. The server runs on localhost 4200 by default. You see the output here. So you can simply go to the browser, enter localhost 4200, and you should see something like this. This is just a simple starting screen provided by the CLI project. Welcome to app, and then some useful links to the official docs and so on. Awesome. Now, the screen you're seeing actually also might look something like this. The starting screen simply was updated with newer versions of the CLI. This does not impact what you learn or the version of Angular you're using. Everything you'll learn in this course is fully up to date with the latest version of Angular. I kept this course up to date in the past. I will do so in the future. It's only that starting screen that changed. Now, in order to follow along smoothly, attached you actually find the app component HTML file. And you can simply go into your Angular project that was created on your hard drive with the ng-new command, and there into the source folder, the src folder, into the app folder, and then simply drag the attached app component HTML file in there and replace the existing app component HTML file you find in there with it. And with that, if you reload localhost 4200, you don't even need to restart the server. You find the same looking starting screen I have here. Again, that's just for you to follow along smoothly. We'll work on these files in the next lecture. So we'll dive into what you got there in this folder and what this app component HTML file actually does. This is just so that you can follow along without problems. Angular itself has not changed. It's just this starting screen. Now, this is our first application. Now we set this up. Of course, not too much is happening here. So let's edit this first step and do something more fancy with it, and also understand what exactly the CLI created in the next lecture.